I want to talk on this subject, how to be a leader that people love to follow. Now, I think one of the reasons I teach on that is, Sonny, you and Cam are leaders that people love to follow. I know that. They love you. They love your leadership. They love how you not only know the way and go the way, but you really kind of show the way as a leader. And so when I thought about you and what you're trying to accomplish, I thought about this subject, but then I have to admit to you that when I teach this today, it becomes very personal to me. And let me just give you the context and explain it. My father passed away on July the 4th. Okay, he was 98 and a half years of age. An amazing man, an amazing leader. And so when I'm working on this subject of what is it about a leader that people love to follow him or her, I immediately began to think of my dad. And I began to think about the fact that he was very successful in life and was a college president for 20 years. And he just, as a leader, just inspired people, and they loved him and they loved to follow him. I love to follow him. He was my lifelong mentor. And so I'm kind of dedicating this lesson, if it's okay with you, I'm dedicating it to my dad. And in so doing, there'll be a few times I'll maybe pull out a story of Dad to share with you of how he was that type of leader that people love to follow. And of course, my goal is to teach this in such a practical, simple way that you become a leader that people love to follow you. Because if you think about it, just think about it for a moment. Think about all of your work experiences, okay? As you really give it thought, haven't there been leaders in your life that they just inspired you and lifted you, and you could pretty much just hardly wait to get to work because you knew when you got to work that good things were going to happen and relationships were strong. And we all know people that we just love to follow. And then is it not true that in our experiences, we've also had leaders that we didn't love to follow? We probably had leaders that we didn't love. We probably had leaders that didn't love us. So what does it take? What does it take to be a leader that people love to follow? That's what I want to talk to you about today. Now, I start this lesson by a survey. It's a fairly recent survey. 4,000 people. In this survey were people that were leaders, supervisors, bosses, okay? And there were also people that were not. They were just on the team. And so it went out, and the survey asked one question, and the question was, what do you think is the best way to improve yourself as a leader? Now, what makes this survey interesting to me is that the leaders answered the question differently than the followers. In fact, the two groups weren't even close. The leaders, the people that were supervisors, they said, well, to improve our leadership, we need to be better in technology, and we need to be better in finances. Now, I'm going to call a timeout right now because I know I'm talking to ITT Design and customers, clients, and friends. And I know technology is your world. So when I give you this survey illustration, in fact, I was kind of amused when I thought about putting it in here, thinking about you, and maybe one of the ways for you to improve your leadership is technology. So I want to be careful here, but please just give me a little space. Let me have a little bit of fun. This survey wasn't to a technology company, and basically they were asking the leaders how they could improve their leadership, and they said technology and a better understanding of finances. When they asked the people that were on the team that were not in leadership positions, what do the leaders of your company need to do to improve their leadership? They gave two total different answers. They said, first of all, they need to become better leaders. They need to increase their leadership skills. And secondly, they need to have greater emotional intelligence. Now, I'm going to call a timeout here because we've already got a problem before I ever even dive into the lesson. And the problem is very simple. The leaders and the team players aren't on the same page. But it's been my understanding in leadership for years as I've helped companies and done my very best to lift the leadership lid. It's been my understanding for years that very seldom are the leaders and the followers on the same page? And I say that because I think one of the major mess-ups in leadership is what I call assumptions. In fact, I say assumptions is the mother of all mess-ups. And assumptions, the assumption gap is the gap between what I think is true and what is truly true. But what do I think? Does it match the reality? You know, Max Dupree said the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. And what I find is that many leaders lead by assumption. They think they know where their people are. They think they know what the people need. And it's not true at all. And so I share that with you because this survey was certainly a billboard for assumption, because the leaders said, well, the way we can improve our leadership is through technology and through finances, and the people on the team, the other side said, no, you can improve your leadership by becoming a better leader, and you can improve your leadership by becoming emotionally intelligent. And by the way, when they said improve your leadership, basically, leadership asked the question, where are you taking me? And emotional intelligence asked the question, how are you treating me? And basically, the people on the team, they said, where are you taking us? And how are you treating us? And I think this is just such an important lesson for me. I hope it's an important lesson for you. And by the way, the title of the lesson is How to Be a Leader That People Love to Follow. It is not entitled How to Be a Leader That People Love. I'm not talking about a popularity contest. I am talking about respect. But respect is always earned on difficult ground. And in our social media culture, where we want to know how many likes we have, we're developing a whole bunch of leaders that aren't leaders at all. They basically are poll takers. So what I'm going to share with you really, really works. So I asked myself, if I'm following a leader that I love, what do I feel? What are my feelings? When I describe that leader that I love to follow, what comes from my heart? Why is it that I love him so much? And I think that there are three feelings that followers always have if they have a leader that they love. And let me give you those three feelings, and then let me teach. I think that if you follow a leader that you love, you always feel valued. I think that's at the core. If I'm following a leader that I love, I can tell you for a fact that I feel valued by that leader. Secondly, I think I feel inspired. There's something lifting about their leadership that I'm inspired when I'm around them. I've had mentors like that. John Wooden, who was the great coach at UCLA, mentored me for several years. And I said, it's wonderful what the coach says, but it's more wonderful just to experience the coach. He inspired me. And I think when you follow a leader that you love, you not only feel inspired and valued, I think you feel empowered. So the question is, how do we develop a culture where people feel valued, inspired, and empowered? That's the question. It's a great question. Think about it for a moment. If in your company, those three feelings consistently exist, people are feeling valued, they're feeling inspired, they're feeling empowered, wouldn't you say that you had a great culture? So what kind of a leader creates that culture? Because I want to say something I think that is very important. When people join a company, when they become a part and they're hired or employed into an organization, it's the company that usually hires them. So they're brought in by the company. But when people leave an organization or a company, they don't leave an organization, they leave a leader. Always. It's a leader that either didn't value them, didn't inspire them, or didn't empower them. That when they leave the company, they don't leave the company, they leave a person. And so it's very important for you and I to know how to have those characteristics and qualities that we are leaders that people just love to follow in our life. So how do I Have the people on my team always feel valued, inspired, and empowered. Let's go. Number one, as leaders, we need a heart to care. If we have a heart to care, this will convey value to our people. Maya Angelou, who was an author, a philosopher, a thinker, a speaker, I'll bet every one of us in this room today have either read something or been inspired by something that Maya said or wrote. It was my privilege, maybe 10, 11 years ago, in Boston to do a conference with her. And I was so excited because I admired her so much, and she lived up to all of her reputation. She was a great lady. It was Maya Angelou who said, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. She is so right on target. We may forget what a person said. We may even forget what they did, but we will always remember how that leader made us feel. And when I thought about that statement, and when I thought that leaders have a heart to care and they value the people that they lead, I thought, okay, let me see if I can get this as solid as I possibly can, so you can get your hands on it and your feet can stand on it, and it will really hold you. It's good and secure. So let me see if I can help you. I think there are 4 words that show that you have a heart to care. I think there are 4 words that show that I have a heart to care. And the 4 words are these: I notice, you matter. Those are the 4 words that if we express them often enough, if we live them often enough, trust me, the people around us will feel valued. Again, I said earlier, I think that when people leave an organization, they don't leave the organization, they leave the leader, and they leave the leader many times because they don't feel valued. When I have one of my team members around me, especially when they're kind of new to me and I haven't been with them very long, I let them know how much I value them. In fact, I tell them that the very fact that they're on my team, I've put a 10 on their head. And what I learned a long time ago is we view people by the way we value people. You see, if I value you as important, I view you as important. Our values of people and our views of people never separate. It's not, I don't view you as unimportant as if I value as important. The values and the views have to come together. And I tell them all the time, I say, I put a 10 on your head. In fact, I tell people, the only way that the 10 can ever be removed is if you take it off. If you make a decision to take a 10 off and put a 5 on, then I'll have to live with your decision. But my decision is to see you as you can become, to value you and your potential. To put a 10 on your head, that's my choice. But when I say to you, I notice, and you matter. I just want you to know, I've noticed that what you're doing over there in the department, and I tell you, it matters and you matter. There's something that is just absolutely uplifting by those 4 words. And somebody asked me the other day, said, well, how do I show that I notice and I matter? And the answer to you is very simple. Appreciate a person more than you think they should be appreciated. Value a person more than you think they should be valued. See a person higher than they can see themselves. You see, it's wonderful when people believe in their leader, but it's even more wonderful when the leaders believe in their people. And when you begin to up your appreciating people as far as your exercises, in other words, when you feel like, boy, I've really shown appreciation to that person, double it. Boy, I've really shown appreciation to that department. Double it. That's how you know that they know that they matter and that you notice them. My dad, going to my dad now, and I'm doing this lesson in honor of him. And by the way, so many of you wonderful folks, I had a lot of people say, well, wow, I'm sorry you lost your dad. And I just want you to know that I didn't lose him because I know where he is. He was a person of faith. He's with his Father. He's with his Heavenly Father. I know exactly where he is. I didn't lose him. You see, you only lose a person if you don't know where they are. But he did leave me. But he left me with so many incredible teachings and memories. And one of the things that I'll never forget when you talk about valuing people is when my father was president of Ohio Christian University. By the way, that was my first university. That was my first college. And I went there because Dad was president. And I thought, hey, if you really want to get through school, go to where your dad's the president. You just increase the odds. And so anyway, one of my favorite times to be with Dad would be during college year. And my father would be in the offices and he knew when the maybe the major break is between classes. And he always would, when he knew that there was going to be students moving across the campus, if possible, he went out on the campus himself. And he would say to me, sometimes I'd be there with him, he'd say, son, let's go. The kids are about to leave their classes and walk across the campus and go with me. And I knew what that meant. That meant that he was going to walk slowly through the crowd, that he was going to walk slowly through the student body. And he knew them by name. And when they would pass, he would call them by name. And he would say, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? Are you adjusting okay to school? How are your classes? And he would get a conversation going with them. He called it walking slowly through the crowd. And it could take him, 30 minutes to walk 50 yards. Because he wanted the students to know that he noticed them and they mattered. And in that conversation, he always would ask this question. He would say, is there something I can do to help you? And sometimes, not all the time, not even most of the time, but sometimes a student might say, well, yes, and they might share a thought with him or something he could do to help them. And my dad always carried a 3x5 card in his pocket. He'd reach in his pocket, he'd pull out that 3x5 card, and with a pen, he'd write down the student's name and what he needed to do to help that student. And then he'd say, now I'll go make sure that you get that help. And he'd have a list. And when the students all went back to class, he would go back and get his staff together and say, okay, this student needs this. A student could use some help here. And my dad was just amazing. And the students, knowing that Dad would be on the campus, were looking for him. And it would start with a couple or one or two. And sometimes there was no walking slowly through the crowd at all. It was just standing in the crowd because they would gather around him. And for maybe 5-8 minutes, he'd hold court and say, I notice and you matter. So to apply this first thought to our lives, the question I have for you is, do your people notice that they matter to you? And how do you know that they know that? And what do you do that makes them know that? And maybe even more important, what are you going to do this week to say to the people on your team, I notice and you matter? In other words, I have a heart to care. I value you. The second thing that leaders do really well, they do this really well. Again, that this characteristic it just gives love to the people that follow. Leaders, as leaders, we need a passion to inspire our people. And I choose the word inspire very carefully because there's another word I use a lot in in leadership, and it's the word motivate. In fact, I wrote a book just recently on the leader's greatest return, and I have a whole chapter on the 7 motivations of people that leaders need to know so that they can lead people best. But instead of saying that we need a passion to motivate people, I said we need a passion to inspire. Let me just give you, it's a small difference, but let me give you the difference between motivating people, which we have to do as leaders. We have to move them. and inspiring people. When I motivate people, that implies to a certain extent that I'm pushing you. Not pushing you aggressively, but I'm slowly nudging and pushing you to do something that perhaps you don't want to do, okay? I'm kind of working from the outside to get you to do something perhaps on the inside. There's a gentle push, okay? I'll explain that in a moment. And when I inspire you, instead of pushing, I'm pulling. I motivate you, I push you. When I inspire you, I pull out of you stuff that is already within you, things that you naturally can do or are good at, but you just need to be led to do it. So get the fine difference between the two, because the question I think as leaders we have often is, when do I push and when do I pull? I have, in fact, I had a very well-known college basketball coach ask me that question when I was mentoring him recently. He said, John, when do I push my players? When do I pull my players? Well, you push your players, your team. Remember, that's motivating. When they need to do things that they're required to do in their job. I mean, there are some things that they don't like to do in their job, just like there are some things you don't like to do in your job. So you have to kind of be pushed to maybe do the things that we don't like to do. You push in the area of teamwork because some people don't want to play team ball. I think you sometimes have to push in the area of servanthood because some people don't naturally want to serve. I think always with culture, with values, with vision, there's a constantly pushing them in front of making sure that whatever is, they need to be kind of gently persuaded to go that way. The flip side of it is what do I pull out of people? What do I inspire people to do? I pull out their strengths. I pull out their natural gifts and their temperament. I pull out their motivations, the things that kind of motivate them. I pull out their passion. I pull out their purpose. In other words, when I inspire people, I kind of reach inside of you and I pull out of you things that you are naturally inclined to do, but may not do if I don't lead well. And the word passion, the leaders that people love to follow, they have a passion to inspire people. I love that because that passion means that they energize you, they maximize you. This is huge. When I teach mentoring, one of the lessons I teach, I think that's so helpful to people is who mentors you is as important as what they say. Now, what they say is that incredible knowledge and information, insights that you need to have in a mentoring relationship. But the contagiousness of mentoring is in the who. As I said earlier about Coach John Wooden, better than hearing what John Wooden had to teach, you just experienced John Wooden. And I left feeling inspired. You see, I learned a long time ago, big people always make you feel bigger. By the way, small people always make you feel smaller. Remember Mary Angelou, who said, Maya Angelou, who said, people, you're not going to remember what they said, you're going to remember what they did, but you are going to remember how they made you feel. And so when my father passed away, a couple days before he passed away, I spent alone with him for a few hours. And at this time, he couldn't respond at all to me. But as you know, when people are dying, listening, they can hear. That sense stays with them longer than the other. And so I sat beside Dad, and on my iPhone, I began to put down the lessons that my dad had taught me. And every time I put a lesson down, I'd stand up and put my hand maybe on his face or his head or his shoulder and just love on him. And I'd say, Dad, you taught me this lesson. When I finished my hours with him that day, the last day I had with him while he was still alive, I had put in my iPhone 29 lessons that my dad taught me. And if you go to, I think, johnmaxwell.com, I think you can get those lessons. I teach them. I think I've taught them in 4 consecutive weeks on tribute to my dad or my father. You may be able to pick them up. I hope you can. 29 lessons. Here's the point. Every one of those lessons, he not only taught me those lessons through his words, he showed me those lessons through his actions. In fact, his actions weighed more heavily than his words. He lived all of the lessons for me to see. That's important because people do what people see. So the question, if you're going to be a leader that people love to follow, are you inspiring them? Are you inspiring them by your example? Can you do what a great leader always does? Look at the people that you lead and say, follow me. And they gladly get up and follow you because there's an inspirational quality there in your life. So the question that I have to ask about myself, and you need to ask about yourself, is very simple. What am I doing to inspire my team? How do I inspire my team? Do my team members feel inspired? Have I asked them, do I inspire you? And what can I do right now to inspire my people? Okay, let's go to the third thing that leaders do very well that cause their followers to love to follow them. And that is that we need a willingness to empower people. Now, this is a lesson in itself, and I only have a few minutes with it and for it, but I want to contrast empowerment, releasing people to reach their capacity and help the company reach its capacity. There's the opposite of empowerment is command and control. And I just want you to know that insecure people love command and control. Anybody that is insecure wants to have their hands on everything and they control everything. And I just want you to know that if you're a command and control person, there's a limitation to the growth of your company, always, not sometimes, always, because it will only grow to the level that you can personally command and control. And the moment that you have to release that to someone else, you get a problem. So you can't have constant continual growth and command and control at the same time. You got to make a decision. If I'm going to have that constant growth, then I have to be an empowering leader. I do a lot of work internationally. I think last year I was maybe 30 countries. I do a lot of work internationally, and one of the weaker parts of leadership internationally so many times is that leaders delegate tasks, but they don't delegate authority. And let me just say this, it's quite simple. If you delegate tasks, you'll never develop leaders. You'll just develop followers. And I see it happen all the time, because you give them a job to do, they go do it, and they come back, and you give them another job, and they do it, and they come back, and then you give them another job. All you're doing is you're developing a follower. They come back, and go out, come back. To be honest with you, it's like playing fetch with your dog. I mean, you get a ball and you throw the ball out, the dog goes, runs after it, gets it, comes back, gives it to you, throw it back out, dog comes back, throw it back out, dog comes back. Most leaders, that's how they run their business. They're just delegating tasks and next, and they're just busy delegating tasks. And all they got is a bunch of followers. You see, if you want to develop leaders, you got to delegate authority. And that's how leaders get established. I began to think about this because I think empowerment is difficult for a lot of people. So in doing this lesson, I just wrote down, because of time, 3 empowerment indicators. Let me give them to you. How do you know that you are an empowering leader? I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can know that you are. 1, the only decisions you make are the decisions only you can make. That's very insightful. You see, decisions should be made at the lowest level possible in an organization, not the highest level possible in the organization. If you're making all the decisions, you're not an empowering leader. And so you begin to share those decisions with others. Another empowerment indicator is that team members are always creating ideas and opportunities. In other words, you're not the only one that's creating the opportunities. I run into leaders sometimes say, boy, if I don't make it happen, nothing happens. Can I tell you something? If you're one of those people that it only happens if you make it happen, you're not an empowering leader. Your people ought to have that authority to create, make mistakes, and try again. Thirdly, trust is the foundation of an empowering leader. That an empowering leader trust his or her people. And again, I run into people that say, well, how can you know if you can trust your people? And I always smile because that's a simple question to answer. My name's John, I'm your friend. It's this simple. The best way to find out if you can trust a person is to trust a person. And what you're going to discover by their actions is if they're trustworthy or not. And by the way, if you don't trust someone, you're either too controlling and haven't given up that trust, or you've got the wrong person, which means you've got to make a change. You've got to either change from command and control to empowerment, or you got to change the person because they're the wrong one. I am so excited today to share with you in this message about Jesus, who was an amazing transformational leader. Many times when I'm doing business secular conferences, we'll do Q&A and people will ask me, they'll raise their hand and say, John, who was the greatest leader that ever lived? Now, I'm a person of faith, you know that. And I will, when that question is asked, I will say to the people that ask the question, I'm a person of faith. So maybe I'm a little biased, maybe I'm a little prejudiced. I don't think so, but I think Jesus was the greatest leader that has ever lived. And I think that's more than just a Christian perspective. I think that's a history perspective. When you take this one person who took 12 unlikely people and made a team out of them, and then has literally had, since that time, billions of followers, you have to say that, yeah, if leadership is influence, which that's what it is, then Jesus perhaps was the greatest leader that ever lived. But I'm going to also say to you, he's not only the greatest leader that ever lived, he's the greatest transformational leader that ever lived. And when I define transformational leader, because that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, how Jesus was a transformational leader and how you can be also transformational in your leadership. We're going to talk all about it here today. But when I talk about transformational leaders, these are men and women who are changed people, and they change people. Now, I can still remember being in Las Vegas, and I was speaking at a convention, and in a conversation with a very well-known leader, I was asking him about transformational movements, and he said to me, he said, all transformational movements begin with a transformational leader. In other words, you have to be transformed yourself to be able to be a change agent to help other people transform also. You see, transformational leaders, they influence people to think, speak, and act in such a way that it makes a positive difference, not only in their life, but in the lives of others. And so my friend Jim Collins at that lunch in Vegas was right on when he said to have transformational movement in a community or in a country, you have to start with transformational leaders. And so this lesson today is about Jesus, an incredible transformational leader. And what's going to be beautiful is we're going to learn from him how he helped change people, and we're going to be able to apply that to our life. And I promise you, by the end of my lesson today, if you want, you can take a step upward like you've never taken before, and you can go from a trained leader to a transformational leader. Let's have at it. What do you say? Let's see how Jesus became a transformational leader, and then let's see if we can apply it to our life. Let's go. The first thing I want to talk to you about as Jesus as a transformational leader is this. He saw things that others did not see. This is about vision. One of the things I teach is the fact that leaders, they see more than others see, and they see before others see. This is true with Jesus. One day he was walking with his disciples, and here are the words that he said to them. As you look around right now, wouldn't you say that in about 4 months, it will be time to harvest? They're looking out at the fields. And he's saying, well, I'm telling you to open your eyes and take a good look at what's right in front of you. These Samaritan fields are ripe. It's harvest time. In other words, Jesus said, if you look at the grains today from human eyes, you'd say, well, 3 or 4 months and there'll be a harvest here. He's saying, I want you to look through transformational eyes. I want you to see more. I want you to see before, and you'll see an entirely different picture. You see, there are some people, when they look at things, they see them as they are. The difficulties, the problems, the issues. Life's tough. So when some people, when they look at things as they are, and they ask themselves why is life so difficult? Why is life so tough? And when they ask the why, I call that the little why, and I call it the little why because if you see from the eyes of most people, what you do is you see the problems. But there is another group of people. They're transformational leaders. And they look at things as they could become. And they ask the question, why not? Why not make those changes? Why not move ahead with possibility thinking? You see, their why is a big why. They see the possibilities. Now, 2 different groups of people look at the same situation, and some people have the little why and see the problems, and some people, they have the big why, and they see the possibilities. You see, transformational leaders look beyond the problems, and Jesus is an example of that. And the reason I share that with you today is that when opportunity comes to you or me, it's not blatant. There's not a neon sign that flashes on and off saying opportunity is here, don't miss this, knock on this door right now. No. Almost all opportunities, almost all great possibilities, almost anything that has potential to it, really, is wrapped up in a problem, a challenge, a difficulty, an adversity. You see, those possibilities are disguised with problems. And transformational leaders, they see the problem, but they also see the possibility. You see, we see things not as they are. We don't see people as they are. We don't see situations as it is. We don't see things as you are and people are, and as we see things as we are. So when I want to have a better vision, a bigger vision, I don't try to change the outward situation. I change the inward situation. Transformational leaders, they just see things that others do not see. Now, could everyone see them? Of course they could, but it's a choice. The second thing about Jesus is he not only saw things that others did not see, he said things that others did not say. Now, this made him extremely attractive. He attracted, when he was on earth, throngs of people by the thousands. And the reason they flocked to him so quickly and wanted to hear what he was going to say, and they listened to his words and watch him, the reason people just thronged to be with Jesus is because he valued them. And they knew he cared for them, that he valued them as they were. And when people realize that you value them, they will get to you as quickly as possible. So Jesus was very attractive because he valued people. And he was very attractive, not only because of that, he was very attractive because of his message. His message was about hope and healing and mercy and grace and forgiveness. It was about transformation, and people longed to hear the good news. And so Jesus, his words, what he said, just attracted the people. I mean, words such as this. Jesus said, I'm a doctor who could help sick people. So you see, if you weren't well, you'd immediately come to Jesus. He said he was a doctor. He said, I'm the bread of life. If you come to me, he said, you won't hunger anymore. He said, anyone who drinks of me, the water that I give them, they're never going to thirst again. He said, I'm living water. He said, words like, I came that you could have life and have it more abundantly. He came so that you could have a better life than you ever dreamed of having before. He said, as I am lifted up, I'm going to draw all people unto me. He said, I'm the way. He said, I'm the truth. I'm the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. You see, Jesus said things that were so attractive. I mean, when he said, I'm the way. Without me, there's no going. I'm the truth. Without me, there's no knowing. I'm the life. Without me, there's no living. I mean, Jesus, he said things that no one ever said before him. And it made him extremely attractive. He valued people, and his message was one of hope. And they just longed to hear his words. They hung on to everything that he said. He was so beautifully attractive, so wonderfully different. In fact, one day, Jesus was teaching, and some children were playing. And, with a crowd, you always have children. And they were playing around the feet of Jesus, and the disciples kind of thought maybe the children were distracting from the message, and they kind of went over and tried to move the children out of the way, and Jesus stopped and said, no, let them stay. Let them stay right here. In fact, he said, you have to become like a little child to come into the kingdom of God. In other words, he said, you have to come to me with simplicity of faith. You have to come to me with openness and vulnerability. Again, what Jesus said was so amazing. I can remember when I graduated from college, that night of graduation, Dad and I and the family were having dinner, and I asked Dad, I said, well, I'm getting ready to start my, ministry. And what words of advice do you have for me? And he said, John, he said, every day, I want you to value people, believe in people, and unconditionally love people. He said, if you'll do those three things, you'll be attractive. People will want to be around you because the people want to feel valued. They want people to believe in them. He said, hardly anyone is unconditionally loved. He said, do those three things. You'll attract people to you. Well, I've tried to do those for 50 plus years. I've tried to do those things. But I've tried to say those things in my lessons. I've tried to write those things in my books. Every time I write, every time I talk, I use that wonderful example that my father gave. Value the people, believe in the people, unconditionally love the people. That's what a transformational leader looks like. He sees things others do not see. He says things that others do not say. But let's look at Jesus again. Thirdly, I would like you to see that Jesus, he believed things. He believed things that no one else believed. Here I'm reading again from John chapter 8 out of the Message. Jesus said, you're tied down. He's talking to the people that he was teaching. You're tied down to the mundane. I'm in touch with what is beyond your horizons. You live in terms of what you see and what you touch. I'm living on other terms. Jesus' belief in people was so attractive. His faith in the possibility and potential of others, so appealing to others. I mean, what did he do? He looked at fishermen. I mean, just common, everyday fishermen. And he believed that they could become leaders. In fact, he said, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. I know you've been catching fish in this boat, but he said, you're going to go to a whole different level. His belief in ordinary people, fishermen, that allowed him to call them and attract them to a lifetime of ministry. Jesus looked at Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was kind of the town crook. He kind of cooked the books, okay? And everybody knew that if Zacchaeus was around you, he was taking you for something. He was a little guy, and he climbed up a tree, and Jesus was coming into the town one day, looked up the tree, saw Zacchaeus, and he believed Zacchaeus could be honest. In fact, he said, let's go to your house and let's have lunch together. The crowd couldn't imagine Jesus associating with this crook. But you see, Jesus saw more than Zacchaeus, the crook. He saw Zacchaeus transformed and changed in what he could become. Jesus looked at Lazarus, believed that he could be raised from the dead. He looked at the Samaritan woman. I mean, a woman that honestly, she was 5 marriages, living with a guy that wasn't her husband. Society really looked down on her, and he looked at her, and he saw her at the well, and he believed that she was a person of value. Jesus looked at the sick and believed they could be healed. He looked at the thief on the cross and believed that he could be forgiven. My father was long-distance mentored by Norman Vincent Peale, the Power of Positive Thinking author and writer. And I just want you to know that it was Jesus, not Norman Vincent Peale, that said anything is possible to a person that believes. It was Jesus, not Robert Schuller, who said everything is possible with God. It was Jesus, not Tony Robbins, who said, if you have a mere kernel of faith, there's nothing you will not be able to tackle. You see, Jesus believed the possibilities, and then he found people that would make them possible. It was all because of his huge belief in people. I call this action attraction. There's a belief that you have in what you're doing, and if you believe in who you are and you believe in what you're doing, all of a sudden, everything because of this belief system begins to change. Your eyes will see things that'll make a difference, and your mind will think things that'll make a difference, and your heart will feel things that'll make a difference, and your mouth will say things that'll make a difference, and your hands, they'll do things that'll make a difference, and your life will attract people who will make a difference. Transformational leaders believe that they can make a difference. And when you believe that you can make a difference, there is always an answer. Okay, Jesus, the transformational leader, he not only believed things others did not believe, he not only said things others did not say, he not only saw things that others did not see. Fourthly, Jesus felt things that others did not feel. He was an incredible man of passion and envy. I'm often known by a quote that I started saying earlier in my career: people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, that's Jesus. He felt things others did not feel. You see, a different world cannot be built by indifferent people. In my book, Change Your World, I talk about the fact that hope, in fact, when you open the Change Your World book, right, the very first page, it says, hope has 2 beautiful daughters, anger and courage. Anger, the way things are, and courage to make a difference. When I was a freshman in college, I can still remember, it was a Psych 101 class that we had a visiting professor one day. And that visiting professor had a very simple talk, but it was a life-changing talk. And I didn't realize it because I was a freshman, but I wrote down what he said, and it became life-changing to me. He said there are 3 questions that every person needs to ask himself or herself. And he gave us those 3 questions, and I was sitting in my psych class, and I wrote them down that day. He said, the first question is, what do you sing about? What makes you happy? He said, the second question is, what do you cry about? What makes you sad? And the third question is, what do you dream about? What do you really want to accomplish? Now, I wrote those 3 things down in Psych 101 class, and to be honest with you, I didn't have the maturity to really value those questions like I do today. I mean, back then when he asked me what I sang about, it was the fact that, you know, the good-looking girl that I wanted to take out for a date on the weekend said yes, and what do I cry about is
The second time I asked her, she said no. And so what do I dream about is maybe she'll change her mind again. My thoughts were not really great thoughts. You understand, they were quite immature. But as I graduated from college and I began to try to really make a difference in this world and feel things that others did not feel, boy, those three questions, what do you sing about? What do you cry about? What do you dream about? They became very important to me. And today I sing about the fact that people learn good values and their life is transformed. I cry about the fact that so many people never have the opportunity to learn those values and to live them. And so therefore they live a substandard life that really, if somebody could have just helped them and shown them, it would have made such a difference. But what do I dream about? I dream about nations being transformed through good values. Now, I feel all those things. That's where my passion goes. That's where my energy comes from. That's what transformational leaders do. They get involved because they want to make a difference. So Jesus, he said things others did not say. He was attractive. He was contagious. He saw things others did not see. He was an incredible visionary. He believed things others did not believe. He was totally full of faith. And he felt things others did not feel. He was passionate about who he was and what he was doing. And number 5, one more thing. He did things that others did not do. He had an incredible, fruitful, successful life. And his fruitfulness was a result of 2 things: his life-changing message and his commitment to develop leaders. His life-changing message helped people become transformed, but his commitment to developing leaders allowed his legacy to continue 20 centuries later. Both of these are essential in your life, that we have a life-changing message and we are developing leaders to pass that message on. Okay, now I'm coming to the incredible good news. The good news is this. Jesus, the transformational leader, wants you to also be a transformational leader. And I know you're saying, oh my gosh, John, okay, talk to me about that. I mean, that's kind of big. I know that you're talking about Jesus, and I got that part. He was amazing. He was God. But are you saying, John, that Jesus looks to me and wants to give me the strength, the empowerment, and believes in me enough to say that I can be a transformational leader also? I'm saying exactly that. On the screen, you're going to now see this scripture verse, and it's just life-changing. It's Jesus talking, okay? And here's what he said. The person who trusts me will not only do what I'm doing, but even greater things. Because I, on my way to the Father, am giving you the same work to do that I've been doing. You can count on it from now on. Whatever you request along the lines of who I am and what I'm doing, I'll do it. That's how the Father will be seen for who he is in the Son. I mean it. Whatever you request in this way, I'll do it. Now, I'm sitting down, you're sitting down. It's a good thing because this just blows me away. When Jesus says, the person who trusts in me is not only going to be able to do what I'm doing, but even greater things. Now, he says that this transformational leadership that he wants to transfer to you and me is based on 2 things. One is we trust in him, the person who trusts in me. And secondly, we are transformational leaders by doing what he did. In fact, he said, if you'll do the things that I did, you can do even greater things. So he's saying, trust me, receive me, let me come into your life as your Savior, and then take action, apply, take your gifts and go use them to change the world. Now, there's another scripture verse I want you to see because this just is huge. It's Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Here's what Paul said. God can do anything. You know, far more than you could ever imagine, guess, or request in your wildest dreams. I know it worldwide. We talk to you about dreaming big and what is your dream? And What do you really want to accomplish with your life? And this passage of Scripture says God can do anything. Far more than whatever that biggest dream is, far more you could imagine, for the guess or request in your wildest dreams. And he does it not by pushing us around. He doesn't like control you and dictate to you, but by working within us, his Spirit deeply and gently within us. In other words, this incredible promise says this. What's your greatest dream? What's the biggest thing you would like to accomplish? Whatever it is, God's able to do far more than you can ever think about or dream about. And how does he do it? He does it not by working outside of you, but by working inside of you, gently helping us to become transformational in our leadership. I call that verse the God room verse. And the God room verse is just simply this. It's the space between what I can do and what God can do. You see, here's the way this works. When I hit the top of my potential, I'm at the ceiling of my strengths and potential, and I'm as high as I can go. My ceiling for me and everything that I can accomplish is God's floor. When I have come to the end of myself, that's where he picks it up. And he has this God room to take me higher than I've ever been before in my life. This God room is unlimited. He said, anything that you ask. This God room is staggering, far more than you could ever think, imagine, or guess in your wildest dream. This God room is personal. It's a work that he does within you. It's a work that he does within me. Wow. Jesus, the transformational leader, who saw things others did not see, said things others did not say, believed things others did not believe, felt things that others did not feel, did things that others did not do. After we're in awe of who he is, he looks at us and says, you can even do greater things than this. By trusting in me as your Savior, and by doing then the works, taking action, using your gifts to add value to people. I feel today here in Hawaii, I feel today that there are many of you would like to step up your leadership. You already are learning how to lead in worldwide, but you would like to become a transformational leader. You would like to be able to touch people and see people's lives incredibly changed. My friend Paul Sika is going to come forward now. And he's going to invite you to come forward. And he's going to invite you to receive this Jesus, this transformational leader. And when you trust in him and ask him to come into your heart, he's not only going to do that today, but then with obedience, if you say, I'll do your work, God, he'll help you to become transformational. Your life will be changed so that you can change the lives of others. So as Paul leads us in this part of the invitation, I want you to come forward and trust in this Jesus. And today, not only accept him as your Savior and your Lord, but today, take the first step in being a transformational leader.
Well, today's topic is titled, Can You Become a Charismatic Leader? Many think charisma is something that you're born with, and it's interesting because I thought that as well. And
because we're both born with it.
Not all we get, but I didn't think that, right? Because I'm more of kind of a consistent level. I'm like, do I have that charisma? And what we're going to talk about today is that it's a choice, and you can really kind of build charisma when you focus on others versus yourself. And so John actually shares that the charisma principle, which says people are interested in the person who is interested in them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the charisma principle. Well, this interested me as well. As why I brought this was we did a podcast a few weeks ago on John's new book is out, the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication. We did two of the laws on 2 back-to-back weeks, but on the second one, we did law number 7, which was the law of connection, and that the law of connection basically says that leaders know that it's all about others. It's not about you. And he says it in the first part of that law. He said it is the most important law in the book. That if you're making it about you, that's going to be problematic. You need to make everything you communicate about others. I love this law of connection because it's been a big piece of my development over the last 10 years or so, is that can you protect the connection irregardless of the content? And so John would say connection over content. And if you've been married for more than about an hour, you know that you can get sideways by thinking your message, your content is so important that you can hurt the connection. If you've been a leader for more than about an hour, you know that you can hurt a connection, a relationship with someone based on the content of your message. My content is so important. I need to deliver this to you right now, and I disregard our connection over the content. And so the whole idea here is, can I put the connection over the content? I can still deliver a hard message, but I can do it in a kind way. Can I do things to communicate? And I was really fascinated because John gave 4 or 5 reasons, but one of the last reasons was, he said that you need to be developing charisma. And I'm like you, I said, I didn't know you could develop it. I thought you either had it or you didn't. So maybe you could take us through what do we think charisma is, and let's talk about how do we develop it.
This is great. Yeah, charisma is really a combination of personal qualities that enable someone to inspire and influence others. Some other attributes, and I kind of tie this to the emotional intelligence, which we're going to talk a little bit about later, but might be confidence and charming and having courage, the ability to connect with others at that emotional level, the EQ side of things. Author Vanessa Van Edwards says the formula for charisma is warmth and competence.
I love that.
Warmth and competence.
Yeah, you think about it.
Because I don't often think about people with charisma at times that are very warm. They may be competent, but they may not be. So I love that. Yeah. She goes on to say that charismatic people signal warmth, trust, likability, collaboration, but simultaneously they signal competence, capability, power, and efficiency. I want to be that guy. Like, I want to be that leader right there.
That's really good.
And I think charismatic people are both likable and respectable, both warm and credible.
Yes, I was reading her work. If you don't know Vanessa Van Edwards, it's a great read on Captivate, and Cues is her newest one, but just a lot about how to relate to people and how to put your best self forward. And her work on charisma, I thought, has really affected me on that. So all of this tells me that charisma can be developed, and so I'll throw out a few. There may be 5. I'm not sure. We'll see at the end.
I love it.
But number 1 would be, and you hit it a little bit there, was develop self-confidence. You think, well, develop self-confidence. Well, charismatic people really believe in themselves. They and their abilities. They're an optimistic group of folks. They have a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And I'm not. They're not. Their confidence is not that they know everything, but that they can learn everything. They're teachable, but they have a confidence that exudes from them because they know that if I don't have it, I can get it, and I can listen and I can learn. They believe they can grow daily. It helps build confidence. What's your thought on?
I think about you when it comes to this in regards to keynotes or speaking from the stage. You just mentioned growth, which I think is key to this with self-confidence. There's not a topic. I've shared this before. I tried to keep up with you for the first 10 days on a reading plan when we met years ago when I was a young lad. And you're an avid consumer of content, all types of leadership, authors, styles, and the ability to recall thoughts, build self-confidence when you're speaking to a group of people that it shows up in the charisma of how you handle a stage because of the confidence you have, because of the growth that you've gone through and prepared for years and years of preparation for those moments. And I hadn't thought about that. So you just said that the growth and the learning builds that self-confidence. I think it creates small wins, create confidence. Small learning moments creates confidence. It doesn't have to be big wins, right? It's like, oh man, I learned this today. I can speak to a little bit about that tomorrow, and then I can apply it, and then I can speak to it a little bit more. And I think that's interesting because that does give you the charisma that you have when you're on stage.
I appreciate that. Well, somebody said to me, "You seem so confident when you're up there. Are you not nervous?" I go, "Well, I'm not. You know, here's what I know. I am a subject matter expert, but there's probably smarter people in the room. I do know that there's probably not anybody more prepared for this talk I'm getting ready to give than in the room, but I am well prepared. And I'm also completely okay that I might be wrong, that there's going to be someone that can point out something I don't know, and that I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm really here." And go back to the law of connection. It's not about me. I'm trying to help add value to somebody in the room. And I know I've prepared. I know this is my space, and I may be wrong, but I'm okay with that. And that gives me a level of confidence to say, tell me, you can dissent. You can actually argue with me, and I will smile and think, wow. And you'll see me often take a pen out of my pocket and make a note that I just learned something, even while I'm on the stage. Somebody just said something that I hadn't really thought about. And I try to think about a lot. I try to prepare, over-prepare. But confidence, you can build confidence by, like you said, investing, pouring into yourself, doing the work, and realizing that you can not only can share what I've learned, but I can learn. So I'm teachable.
Yeah, that's good, right? So growth leads to the preparation, which leads to self-confidence, which shows charisma in a positive way when you go about through that process. Practice your communication skills. So building kind of off of this, charismatic people listen carefully. They articulate their thoughts clearly, which you guys would, if you heard our outtakes on this podcast, you would question our charisma when it comes to that.
Outtakes? Are there outtakes?
They're outtakes, yeah. Use body language effectively. They show value to others by actively listening to understand and to serve them. There's that the warmth, that connection that you've been talking about that helps drive charisma.
Yeah, it's about putting your message, thinking about, think how charismatic. You said they're succinct. They say things confidently. Are you prepared for how you're going to communicate your message, whether you're speaking to a teenager in your home or a team at your work? Are you practicing your communication skills? And you hit a very interesting, it's not just how you speak, your body language. What are you showing people? Are you showing that you're present? Are you available? Are you listening? Lots of things going on around how we communicate with people. So I think when you practice those skills and work on your confidence, you begin to develop. I see where John's going now, is that I can begin to build this charismatic approach to things.
That's good.
Number 3 that I liked was, you mentioned it a little earlier, about developing my EQ, my emotional intelligence. Charismatic people seem to have a high level of EQ. It enables you to connect better with people, and I think connect more deeply with other people when you put yourself in their position. We think about, how do you develop? So I need to develop my EQ. How do I do that? And for me, it's really been around self-regulation, that regulating my emotions. John would say, are you displaying or delaying your emotions? And I thought, well, if I'm not very charismatic, I'm probably doing a lot of displaying my emotions. Charismatic people would delay, and high EQ people would delay their emotions, knowing that no matter what you said, no matter what the situation, no matter what the input was, I have a choice to make on how I respond or react to that. And I like the fact that charismatic people are able to self-regulate and not blow back on everybody that says something you don't like. That I'm able to make my choices about how I show up.
I'm smiling over here while you're talking, because I'm thinking about leaders that I have either seen through some of our work with other organizations that weren't able to regulate. I like that word that you used, or don't lead consistently on a daily basis, and their team they don't have any idea, right? And so while they may have a lot of energy and they may seem charismatic, they just don't know what leader they're going to get that day.
And consistency is huge.
And the consistency part of that. Yeah. The other thing too is, it reminds me of a study that we talk about periodically, where, man, when they study some leaders, they say 85% of the time on a weekly basis, they're thinking about the EQ side of connecting and leading with people. And so I love how you made that one of these points here in regards to us becoming a charismatic leader. Well, number 4, be clear about your why. Charismatic people have a strong sense of purpose and vision. They're passionate about their goals to be able to inspire others. I think inspire comes with when you lead charismatically, and when you have a clear direction that you're going as a team, maybe as an individual contributor, maybe as a leader of the organization, and your why is really, really strong. It adds to your confidence. I know some leaders that would say, even in some of the worst times an organization can be going through, their why is so resolute, they're so strong on it, that it gives them that charisma to where all of a sudden people around are going, yeah, we're in the boat with you, and the boat's sinking, right? Just because their why is so strong.
Yeah, I came off a stage a few weeks ago, and I'd been up for 8 hours on a intense workshop with senior leaders, which makes it intense workshop for me. And I'm about ready to leave, and the guy says, how do you do that? How do you do that? You had such energy for all day. How do you do that? I go, we had done an exercise on why and purpose, about their purpose. And I thought, you know that little exercise? He goes, yeah, I'm living mine right now. And it gives me that energy that you generally associated with charisma. You're attracting others through your own energy. Where'd that come from? Was I tired? Heck yeah, I was tired. But I wasn't going to back down, because this was me fulfilling my purpose in that moment.
Love
I thought, oh, wow. And but he noticed, I wanted to say, did you get anything else out of class? Or you're just amazed in my energy
What's
level.
your number one takeaway? I can't believe how charismatic Perry was all day.
My wife, you can't believe this guy. He went all day. I thought,
Yeah.
I generally, so we work all day. Number 5.
We do work longer than 8-hour days.
You told us we had to work half days, but you didn't care which 12 hours it was. So I appreciate that about you. All right, number 5 was, if you're going to build charisma in you, be more charismatic, was to be more vulnerable. And charismatic people are authentic and genuine. They're not afraid of themselves, who they are, what their weaknesses are. They just come across that confidence that we spoke about earlier. Stop trying to appear perfect. Charismatic people do not appear perfect. They share their ups and downs. They share their strengths, their struggles. It builds trust when you do that, and I think that's a key component of charisma.
These 5 ideas that you brought to us are great. And let's remember, as listeners, as leaders, the why behind why we want to develop charisma. Let's also remember the fact that this can be learned. But we want to make sure that we become a charismatic leader to our people, because we want to inspire and influence others. Everybody deserves to be led well. We want to create powerful, positive change inside organizations and teams that we lead. And as we're working through this, make sure, we talk about this a lot, there's a fine line between influence and manipulation, and that's your motive. And make sure that you are leading charismatically because you want the other individuals to succeed, maybe greater than yourself, which would be awesome. Leader's greatest return. And then for the organization, and then finally for yourself, your motive matters.
Well, it reminds me of a lesson that I've learned here as I've been working with this team, and that I wish I'd have known when I was 25, was that you're always making people feel something. Are you aware of what you're making people feel? John says people won't go along with you, they can't get along with you. And I thought, are you a likable person? Are you working to be likable to other people? You're not going to have charisma or demonstrate positive charismatic tendencies if you are not a likable person.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking just that little question about, what am I making people feel? And I am always making people feel something. Could I do it on purpose? And it generally starts with the lesson I like to teach on mind your face, is that you're generally a different person when you smile and when you greet people, and your charisma begins to come out through that positiveness of starting with a smile. Before you ever open your mouth, people are already making a decision about you. So your charisma kind of enters the room maybe before you as your countenance shows up. So I love that little lesson, and I'm always thinking about that. When I'm walking through the airport now, I'm smiling, greeting, looking around. I'm thinking, because everybody else looks like they're going to a death march. And I thought, I don't want to be that. I'm trying to make people feel something positive.
Yeah.
And I can do it. It's my choice.
As we wrap up, I want to go back, and I want to go back to the quote that we read earlier on, because I think there is a misperception of the word charisma or a charismatic leader. It makes me think too of the illustration where you're like, hey, when you walk into the room as a leader or someone with influence, we define leadership as influence. We all have influence with people. When you leave the room, there's two things that'll happen, right? They either go, man, that leader was the smartest individual in the room, or they'll go, man, I feel like I've learned I'm smarter now because that leader's in the room. A lot of us, I think, have this misperception that a charismatic leader is that first one. Loud, boisterous, going to tell you what I'm thinking, this, that, and they walk out. Versus I now have learned through this conversation today, and even just digging into a little bit of this and John's content, to where I go, maybe a charismatic leader is really the one that leaves that room and they go, I think I'm smarter, because of that conversation.
That's good.
And that experience with that leader. And so it goes back to the quote that you have in our notes here, where it says from Vanessa Van Edwards, where charismatic people signal warmth, trust, likability, collaboration, but simultaneously they signal competence, capability, power, and efficiency. That's our goal as leaders.
So what does it take for a leader to be brave enough or wise enough to surround themselves with people who are honest and truthful as they are pursuing their dream?
Well, I think it's to be honest first. I think it's to be willing to go first in the area of honesty. I just had it's so funny because I just had a series of meetings, and one of the people in the meeting was really giving me a very dismal report, just a really challenging, in my opinion, discouraging report. And I looked at this leader and I said, hey, can I ask you a question? Is your attempt here to level set me, to discourage me, or to encourage me? And I said, you may have a fourth option. I don't know, but that's the three that comes to mind. Level set me, discourage me, or encourage me. And the leader sat back for a moment and went, I think it was to discourage you because I feel discouraged right now. Well, I was waiting for them with great candor and confidence. I was waiting for them to say it was just meant to level set you, because that was the easy way, right? That's the answer of a 5 out of a scale of 1 and 10.
Right. Exactly.
You don't have an opinion.
Neutral.
And so I went, I really fully thought they were going to say to level set me, but my comeback to that was going to be, well, I already knew these numbers, and I know these numbers. So I was ready for the answer that I thought. When this person says, I think it was discourage you because I discourage you, I'm going to tell you what happened, Tracy. My respect level for this leader went through the sky, through the roof. And here's why. I realized I had somebody that would be honest with themselves and also honest with me.
Yes.
Now, you know why they did that? Is because I paused and I put them on the spot, because I wanted to know, because it was not advantageous to the meeting. So as a leader, I led them through candor and I got candor back, or I led them through trust and I got trust back. See, when John says, and when he's talking about dropping a plot, he was really talking about this concept that he says more people fought it. You'll remember last week, those of you that have listened to last week, you'll remember when we talked about the family members and others that just did not catch it, and they really began to discourage us. What John's saying here is, no, it's gone beyond it. You've already got it. You've got it. But guess what? People are not happy that you got it. You're on your way. In fact, there's tangible results. You're starting to experience your dream. And now you got the people that's going, ooh, they're like the crab that wants to pull you back down with the rest of them, because they don't want you to get out of the bucket. So you've got a little bit of experience, and rather than surrounding yourself with people that are excited for you, it's people that fly over and plop on you because why? I don't know. So ask them, hey, why are you raining on my parade right now?
Yeah.
What are you trying to accomplish? And I have found the people that will respond well to that, I can trust them. When this leader told me that, I was like, are you hearing what you're saying? You're trying to discourage me. I didn't go, man, you got to be kidding me. You're discouraged. I'm discouraged. I went, no. I said, thank you for telling me that. Now let's get encouraged together.
Right.
The leader came up to me. In fact, I was a little late here, Tracy, to the recording today. The leader came up to me after, says, I don't think I have ever been handled so well when I was feeling discouraged and I wanted somebody else to be discouraged with me. I will do better next time. I said, touchdown.
Yeah.
Because of a candid conversation with somebody that was absolutely raining on my parade. I found out why. And then they too wanted to change that and fix that and become better themselves.
Why I love stories and why we are fleshing out and adding stories to these lessons. This lesson again is very similar, other than the plop story. These don't have really application. These are unique stories or lessons for John in that they don't come with applications. John is such an application guy. And so we are fleshing out these stories. Why I love this story that you just told is because we have all been you and we have all been the other person in your story. And every person listening can identify with, hey, you know, sometimes when we feel bad, it's annoying when someone is upbeat and positive and we're looking through negative goggles. And so sometimes, you know, that hurting people hurt people. That's when we become that person. And it's so wonderful when someone handles us in a way or relates with us in a way that helps us to rise, which is what you did. And I think that's the lesson in that story right there is we can do that rather than be put out. You could have been put out and annoyed with that person on your team. You know, you could have pulled rank as the boss. You could have said, we don't have that kind of attitude in our team meetings. We don't have that, you know, please don't bring that here or whatever. But you handled that person with honesty and transparency, which gave them the freedom to be honest and transparent. So then that to me is a lesson of what kind of leader are we being that we allow our team members to be open and transparent when they're feeling not so great, when they show up to a team meeting, when ideally they should be positive. So thank you for sharing that because discouragement is catchy, but so encouragement can be catchy too.
At the very beginning, he talked about the best motivation is self-motivation. And for me, you know, if you take the Strengths Finder test, as I've grown as a leader, my top 5 have changed over the years, but number 1 has always been positivity. And so all from the time I was a young person, people would say, oh, you know, Tracy, you're so motivating. You're so positive. And so as a young person, a budding leader, I don't know who needs to hear this today, but I know somebody does. I felt like that was my calling. That meant that what people were saying to me was that my role was to motivate people and to bring that positivity to people, which was true to some degree. But what I found myself doing a lot of the time was exactly what that quote said. And that was, I was motivating promoted people. I was motivating the wrong people. And the quote from Tom Golisano was that you can demotivate people, but you know what also? You can demotivate yourself.
That's right.
When you are trying to motivate the wrong people, it is exhausting. So if you think of this as your little check mark. If you're wondering if you've been motivating the wrong people, if you find yourself exhausted, demotivated, a little down and discouraged, if you feel like you're ready to throw in the towel because maybe you aren't a motivated or positive person and you're starting to feel negative even, then odds are you have probably been trying to motivate the wrong people. Right. And so I'm just curious, Mark, did you ever need a thinking shift, or were you always a leader who motivated yourself, motivated the right people, or were you somebody who also, like me, brought your positivity? Because you're a very positive and motivated person. Just to be around you, I know people just walk away from you smiling and a little spring in their step. Were you always that way, or were you somebody who, like me, found yourself a little exhausted and demotivated from motivating the wrong people?
Yeah, so I wish I could say, I once had that problem, but the real truth is I still have that problem. And I'll tell you what I mean with that. You know, as John was teaching that, and even Tracy, as you were just talking about kind of your epiphany back in earlier in life, I thought about the question that John gets asked all the time. Hey, how do I motivate my people, right? Any leader out there want to lift their hand and say, yeah, that's me. I want to know, how do I motivate my people? Yeah, Tracy's got both hands up. I've got both hands up. I want to motivate somebody, please. And John says, here's the best way to motivate people. And everybody kind of grabs their pen and their paper. And if you're watching on YouTube today, I mean, I've got my paper ready. I'm ready to hear what John has to say. And he says, the best way to motivate people is hire motivated people. Yeah. And now it's so fun to kind of laugh and go, yeah, that's right. Well, what happens when we are the people? when the people that needs motivating is us, is you, I, the leader in the equation. And I think, Tracy, that's what you're asking me is, how do we lead ourselves? John says leaders motivate themselves, followers wait for others to motivate them. And I do want to be an inspirational person. In fact, my life purpose that I discovered at 33 was I exist, Mark Cole exists, to motivate and inspire people to reach their full potential. And I know that to live out that purpose of inspiring or motivating others, it has to start with me. And yet, there are times that the last thing that I feel is motivated or inspired. And so I do think the idea of inspiring oneself is a muscle. It's something that we have to work at. We have to put into practice. What motivates you? What's your happy place? What's things that refuel you and replenish you? What is your ideal Sabbath or time of rest so that we're working from rest rather than resting from work? And I mean, I believe that's really important, but I also think, Tracy, that for us as leaders, we do have to realize that if we rely on external circumstances or external relationships or external factors to motivate ourselves, we are in for a very difficult road in the area of leadership. There has to be within us, much like what Tracy had, an epiphany that says, I am going to be my chief motivator. I can't rely on others. I can't rely on circumstances. I've got to find ways to inspire myself so that I will inspire others. And I think that's what John's saying here, Tracy. I think that's what your epiphany was. There has to be in each of us a realization, an accepting of responsibility that if we are going to be motivated, if we're going to inspire others, it is going to be up to us to motivate ourselves. And I think that's a big distinction between leaders and followers, as John noted in the lesson today.
I agree. And I don't want, if you didn't get this and write it down, I wrote it down as Mark said it, because I haven't heard you say this before, and it's powerful to me. We should be working from rest rather than resting from work. And I think so many of us limp into the weekend, whatever day that is. Maybe it's a Saturday, Sunday, or maybe it's a Monday, Tuesday, or whatever your work schedule is. But so many of us limp into the weekend rather than, and then try to gear back up again for the Monday of our work week, rather than every day waking up refreshed because we are rested. We are staying in a place of rest so that we are working from that rest. And that is, if you don't know what that is, if you don't know what that feeling is, then you're probably resting from work.
Yeah.
And it's a huge difference. So thank you for saying that, Mark. And I think that really does bring a motivation. And you and I were talking a little bit before this. One of the things that John says that is a distinguishing mark from other leaders, and that is that he talks about being a motivational teacher, not a motivational speaker.
Right.
Can you kind of differentiate that for people who maybe haven't heard him say that before?
Yeah, so just come to a John Maxwell event and you will leave inspired. In fact, we did a study in 2021 on why people make a decision to become a customer, a client, a partner of the John Maxwell organization. We were in the middle of our rebranding and we wanted to know the why. Why did people come? And so whether you talk to prospects, whether you talk to one-time customers, or whether you talk to multiple customers, over 80% of them said, we came for inspiration and skill development. We wanted a few tools that would make us better, and we wanted some inspiration. John is a motivational, inspirational, incredible teacher. But John says, hey, I don't want to be a motivational speaker, because a motivational speaker, you feel good, but 30 minutes later, you can't remember why. But a motivational teacher, you absolutely can feel good, but you know why, the skill set, the application piece.
Right.
But you know, something that most people would not know about John in the area of creativity or in the area of leadership, even. When we have things that we need to make decisions on, and I've brought him into those decisions, he doesn't come in like he does from stage. He goes, we got this. Come on, guys. Everybody good. I'm more lean toward that, to try to passionately inspire people through challenges. John settles down, almost becomes melancholy in his demeanor as he works through it and allows that grind or that challenge to be felt in the room, and doesn't try to get people hyped over it. Again, I have to be careful with that, but not John. And so it's an interesting observation of John that when he's on stage, when he's got the teacher's lesson in hand, that he really challenges and inspires people through motivation. But yet when he gets into a leadership context, he very much settles his emotions down and begins to methodically work through that particular challenge. I every day try to learn from him. Every trip, just a weekend ago from the time we recorded this podcast, I was asking John, help me to distill below the emotion to the reality of the situation so that we can practically work through it. And I think we as leaders need to understand when we need to motivate and inspire people, and when we need to be accessible and steeped in reality of a difficult situation. I think John's given us a lesson on that with these 4 Ps.
Yeah, he sure does. I love how you said that. He brings his energy low and getting below the emotion, that he does not rely on the hype of energy. And as two energetic people, you and I can relate to that and really that is a lesson to be learned for people who are high energy people, to settle in, and so that you don't walk away, that the people in your hearing as a leader, that they don't walk away not knowing what to do.
That's right.
Feeling so good. And I can tell you, I have left where I know that my audience felt really good. And I know that they felt good. And I know that they felt probably that they liked me, but they didn't know what to do.
Right.
And I know that I've done that before. And so it's just another learning lesson. And so getting into those 4 Ps, I feel like these really, the 4 Ps that inspire effort. And I feel like he really, in perspective and perceptive, I feel like he really, was there anything that you wanted to touch on those, and persistence? I feel like he really did a good job teaching on those. Was there anything that you wanted to touch on those before we get to persuasion?
The only thing I would say on perspective is often we put our perspective on other people and we think, wow, if this motivates us, it has to motivate everybody else in the room.
Right.
And that's not true. When John's teaching this perspective, he asks the question, it's in your notes, how do others see things? And many times we as leaders, we fall prey to the trap of trying to motivate people the way we're motivated rather than motivating the people the way they are motivated. And so leaders, communicators, get into the shoes of the people that you're trying to influence and understand their motivators, their perspective, and that's true on perceptive too. And, the things that used to motivate me don't motivate me anymore. I've changed. Right. I've matured. I want maybe less partying and a little bit more significance in my life. And a leader needs to understand the phases or the seasons of the people he or she is leading to be able to motivate. And that's what John's talking about with perceptives. But again, it goes back to the perceptive of the individual you're trying to lead or influence, not your perceptive. Mm-hmm. I've often thought, man, a new car has motivated me at different times in sales contests and different things. And somebody else goes, I could care less about that. As a leader, we need to understand the things that really grab their attention and use those in our inspiration.
And I think that works both professionally and personally. I mean, I'm talking to parents right now that when you're trying to motivate your kids and different kids, what motivates one kid is going to be totally different. So these can apply, these 4 Ps, inspiring effort, it's not just about teams in the marketplace. We're talking about in families too, because we are raising up leaders in our homes.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to inspire effort in our kids, it's about asking the questions and inspiring the thirst in the horse of our children
That's
that
right.
we really want to make sure that we do that as well. Okay, so let's jump to number 4, because I would like to park it a little bit there. And I know that you and I talked a little ahead of time that's really one. We hated for it to it was like a cliff. He walked us up to the cliff and we were like, oh, we wanted a little bit more.
Hey,
and so
he walked us up to the cliff and said, take it away, Mark and Tracy. You guys go for
that's
it.
Right.
And so that's
So
what
we
we're
will-
going to do.
That's right.
Tracy, it's funny you just mentioned that, make the kids thirsty. In the lesson, you heard John say that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And so then he says, you know, a lot of people think you've got to inspire them to drink. And John says, no, you got to inspire them to be thirsty, because when you're thirsty, you'll drink.
Right.
And so I think that really links to the foundation I want to lay with persuasion. And one of the things that you and I, podcast viewers, podcast listeners, one of the things you and I can always go back to in our life is working for a disingenuous leader that really was motivating us for their interest. And for if you were watching, you caught the air quotes. For those of you that were listening, I did air quotes around motivating right there. They're motivating us, but really they're manipulating us, right? I mean, it's this idea. Great leaders have to really walk a thin line between motivation and manipulation. And that's why when John began to teach this persuasion through sweetness, I think the sweetest thing to anyone's ear is what? You've heard it said before, their name. When somebody remembers their name. Well, I think in the art of motivation, the sweetest thing that a leader can do to motivate people is to persuade me to do what I want to do. That's sweet. That's as sweet as a name. That's sweet when a leader begins to know me enough and pull out of me the things that I am passionate about that I need to be pursuing. And I really want us as leaders to know the art between manipulation and motivation, or persuasion and trying to prescribe to somebody your opinion of what they want or what they should have. If we can learn how to inspire them to thirst. That's what I want you to write in your notes. Jared, sitting in the studio today, gave me that concept. He said, Mark, I really think what John's talking about, when you lead people to a horse to water, you're really trying to figure out how to inspire others to thirst after their best self, after their best version. And when people get hungry enough, it goes back to a quote I give all the time. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I'm sitting here today going, how do I, in the art of motivation, how do I inspire people to a thirst, persuade them to a thirst that will allow them to lean in and let me help them? And it comes back to this one statement. Do the work of knowing your people. Do the work. How can I better understand what causes my people to be thirsty? I love giving personal illustrations, and my personal illustration here is Miley, my Australian Shepherd. She is the perfect dog. Miley, when we travel, and my wife Stephanie and Macy traveled with me this past weekend, and we went out, and Miley just doesn't like to eat while we're gone, and she really doesn't like to eat when we get back. Doesn't drink a whole lot. She loses weight. It's visible. We can see it, and she won't eat her food. She just misses her mother. She does not miss me, because that would be a constant state of affairs. But she misses Stephanie. She misses Macy. And so we got back yesterday, and she still wasn't eating. So now she's about 3 days, not drinking, not eating. So we took her on a run through the park. I mean, we ran, she chased squirrels. We cleaned the park out with all those terrible squirrels. When we came back, guess what Miley did? She went to get something to drink, And after about 15 minutes of cooling down, she cleaned her entire bowl. You know why? We made Miley thirsty. We knew what it would take. Chasing squirrels is the ticket for Miley. Well, find out what squirrels your team needs to chase. And when you can find that, then you can begin to persuade them to be thirsty for their best self. Tracy, I think that's the art here.
I agree. And he said, just as it's about relationship. And we can't miss that. It's what you're showing there is the relationship that he has with Stephanie and with Macy. And I would even say a little bit you. But I feel like what your dog was feeling like, what people, I mean, we're drawn to relationship. And John will say, if you don't love people, you'll manipulate them.
That's right.
And as a leader, that's a great gut check. But for those of us who also have had leaders, what is the questions that John says that we're all asking when we're working with a leader? Can I trust you? Do you care for me? And can you help me?
Yeah.
So when you are in a position where you're feeling like, am I being manipulated here? Some of those other three questions, because what did he say? Good leaders ask great questions. So ask yourself those questions. Is this person trying to help me? Can I trust this person? Because those are those kind of gut checks that you need to ask if you are feeling like you might be manipulated, or if you're the leader, if you're feeling like, am I being tempted to manipulate them? And he said, partnerships, which is relationships, the best partnerships, there is going to be a win-win. It shouldn't just be one-sided where just the leader is winning or just the person we're serving and leading is winning. The best partnerships, the best relationships where people are winning. And going through those 4 Ps where we are inspiring and motivating people is when we're going to see the win-win.
Well, and I go back. In fact, there's a relevant episode we're going to put in the show notes because it's really practical in helping you with motivation. We did 10 maxims for motivation. We did a series on that, and we're going to put that in the show notes because I want you to go back and really get some practical things. The biggest thing I can give you is know your people. Know who it is that you're attempting to persuade, to give perspective, perceptive, persistence to, and begin motivating them.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.